We're going to deploy a .NET Razor Pages app onto Blossom in this video. To do that, we're going to click on View Documentation right here. That takes us to this lovely Quick Start page. So the Quick Start page, you can see a bunch of different Quick Starts. The one we're looking for is right here, .NET Razor Pages. Then that gives us some instructions. Visit the Blossom Quick Starts page. Then we're going to choose the example and click Deploy. So we'll click on Quick Starts. And again, you can see it right here, .NET Razor Pages. So once you click Configure Deploy, it takes us to the form here. And on the form, you can see there's a pre-selected cluster already, the demo cluster. So I'll show you that cluster real quick. Here's a demo cluster. So I created this cluster ahead of time here. I created this cluster on Hertzner right here, and you can see there's one server associated with all the kind of rows collapsed. I do want to point out that even though I created those on Hertzner, if you go back to the docs here and scroll down to any of these clouds right here, you can see any cloud you could use that, whatever cloud that you're using, you could opt to use that instead. I'm just using Hertzner for the demo. You can also use no cloud, or you can use your own basically data center. So there's a lot of options there. Let's go back here. Let's take so these, I want to explain the servers a little bit. So there are some rows here that are collapsed onto one server because this is a demo. So I'm just running everything basically in one server. Now, if you're using this for like a demo environment or a stage environment, it makes a lot of sense to collapse everything down just to save costs. And then basically you have everything collapsed down to one server. But if you're using for, like, let's say a more production environment, then you might want a load balancer with a separate web tier and a separate worker tier. So those two don't cause essentially noisy neighbors with high CPU load and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of up to you how you want to use it. You could also run multiple apps onto the same cluster with the same servers, or you could run a cluster with a separate app. It's kind of up to you. You could even see here, this demo app actually, or this demo cluster, has a couple of demo apps I've already deployed onto this. That explains the cluster. Next, we're going to look at the rest of the quick start here. There's the app name, and here's the repository URL. So let me grab that, and let's go look at the GitHub repository real quickly. And it's just a pretty simple Razor Pages to-do list app, I guess. So that's what we're going to be deploying. Going down here, next is you need a Docker registry. So Blossom, what it does is it builds a Docker image and it pushes it to a registry. So you need to use one. I'm using Docker Hub here, but you can use any registry you want. Pretty much all the major ones are supported. If you click on back onto the GitHub repository example here, I'm pointing out there's no Docker file. The reason there's no Docker file is Blossom actually will look at your source code and figure out what it needs to build. It will figure out if it needs to build a .NET Razor Pages app, and then it's going to deploy that. But if you have extra customizations that you need, then you can always use your own Docker file and then tell it to use that, or you can even use a pre-built Docker image. So there's different ways you can use it. It's kind of entirely up to you. But a Docker file is completely optional. I want to point that out. And here's some basically environmental variables as part of the quick start here. And lastly, there's a database here. So the database, let me show you where I actually created the database. So you go under services, is a database service, is Postgres here, and you click on that, and you can see there's a database underneath the Postgres service here. You can actually go on that, and you can see there's going to be URLs here, but you can actually even configure backups if you want to. Next is we go to the bottom page now and click Create App. So create app now takes you to essentially the app dashboard and tells you to click on the deploy button right here. So I click that and it starts to deploy immediately. You can see the logs basically streaming here. You click on that. This takes us to the main log, the master log essentially. So the parent log right here basically shows you all the commands that are going to be executed across this cluster on multiple servers, if there are multiple servers. If there is not, then this is only this one server like we have here. But the nice thing about this is it keeps the kind of the main log kind of nice and short. So it's readable, it's legible. And if you need more details, you click on each individual log. You can see it's actually going through the build stage right now. So it's building the image and everything right now. Let's go back to now the parent log, and let's go back to the dashboard here. So here's the dashboard that we originally started on, and that's where we click deploy, and this is where the logs kind of popped up. Now I'm going to kind of explore through the UI here just so you get a feel. Here's the GitHub repository right here. You can see the GitHub repository has been configured already from the quick start. That's the public repository, but if you need to use private repositories, you just click on that, and you click Connect Provider, and you connect to the provider of choice, and then it shows up right here, and then you can configure your private repository there. So that's important if you don't want to use a public repository. And once you configure a private repository, I should point out, then you could have easy access to CI or CD, continuous deployment, where you just click a button and it essentially sets up a webhook with a Git provider, and then it automatically will deploy your application whenever you do a Git push. So that's pretty nice. Docker registries, this is also was part of the quick start, but you can always configure it here. So you can go here and you connect to actually multiple registries. And when you click on this, you can see that all the major registry providers are supported there. And then this is where you would push your image to. Next is database. So here's the database. So the database service is linked. So what we do is we create a database. This is if you have a database running on one of your servers managed by Blossom, then you can link it. If you're using RDS or something else, or like a vendor database service, then you will instead just add it to environmental variables, which I'll show you here. See, you can add it environmental variable here, like database URL. I'm going to delete that. But you see the linked ones are also here. And I should point out the environmental variables that you add are going to override the linked ones. These are kind of dynamically created based on what service is linked to it. Next is app logs or activities and app logs. So app logs is basically when the container is up and running, then you're going to actually see logs here streaming over to your UI here, which is really nice and useful debugging. This is like where I go to if I need to debug right there. Okay, and you can see it's kind of doing some stuff now. Activity, we're going to go back to the deployment right here. You can see it went through the build phase, so it built everything. Let's click on that, and then you can see at the end, it basically did a Docker push. And then the release phase, basically, it's essentially, that's like a Heroku release phase hook. So that's where you can run migrations or do other setup things you need to do. Then here's the deployment. This deployment is, you can see it's pretty simple. It's just Docker compose up. That's the nice thing I like about this. It keeps everything nice and simple. Managed domains, what that is it creates a short URL that makes your app immediately available. So you can see right here, there's the short URL, and basically it sets up with SSL and everything already done. The last phase is the load balancer phase. The load balancer phase is what's gonna make this app completely accessible here. Now that's done, it's completely done, so we can go back to dashboard here and click on view app. That's gonna take us to the short URL, and here's the deploy app. Here's the Razor Pages app right here. Here's a little demo of the to-dos. You click on the to-dos, you can see it's connected to a database because you can go here and kind of edit and do everything that you want with it. And then there's also, on this demo, some links to the documentation and links to even more quick starts if you kind of want to go through more quick starts and all that kind of stuff. All right, that shows you how to deploy a Razor Pages app onto Blossom. Thanks.